Fáilte Staach Cordet, this month's Agal of Bhuil, or our members interview. I'm joined here by Tim. Tim, Conna Satatu.
Tom Gama, Conna Satatu Fin.
Tommy Gahunta Gurmagut. So I'm delighted that Tim is joining us all the way from Boston. So I suppose what I'll do is I'll let you introduce yourself, Tim, as Gaeilge, and for those who don't understand Gaeilge, you'll follow on with a bit of English then afterwards.
Fair enough. Taig Macdala Kada is on dum. Ruga me I Gunte Kerry. Toga me on Godi vi me Jack Blian Dish. I Nidiag Kega is oct. Vog me August Mo Hilak Huig Boston. Huig me Manskol August Ulskol I America. Dover me Mar Corlor. Muntor Priv Hida I Bunskalana agus Manskalana do Kuig Vlian is Dahid. Vi me Egari as aber da Blian o hin. Anish Tommy imo hail cool ridak or no Tommy imo score. Vi me e cosa do mo van kele do 3 blian is dahed. Ta da hashti again, mak agus inien, agus ta garvak a wine again. Fi lahar, tame I Mahoney I Stowe, Massachusetts, is balya beg e Stowe. VMR in our goni on o VMR posad 3 vliam is dahed. So
yeah, all of that now as Bearla for those who didn't understand.
Okay, Tim McGillicuddy is my name. I was born in County Kerry. I grew up there until I was 10 years of age. In 1958, my family and I moved to Boston. I went to secondary school and to college in America. I worked as a counselor, a teacher, and a principal in primary schools and secondary schools for 45 years. I am retired now, and I am in my retirement, enjoying it. I am married to my wife for 43 years. We have 2 children, a son and a daughter, and 1 grandson. Currently, I'm living in Stowe, Massachusetts. Stowe is a small town. We have been living here since we were married 43 years ago.
Lovely. A lovely story, Gurmila Maga, Tim. So my first question there would then to follow on naturally would be, yes, you grew up in Kerry, and you said that you went to secondary school and college and the rest in the States, but I presume you had Gaeilge or Irish in school. What would have been your first interaction or your first memory even of the language?
So I had a wonderful teacher in when I was in baby infants and first class. So I went to a national school just outside of Killarney. It was called the Lisviggy National School. It was a 4-room schoolhouse. So so my first teacher, her name was Miss Annie Sullivan, and she was a native Irish speaker. So she taught us, our colors, our numbers, how to say our prayers in Irish, and how to open the door, sweep the floor, open the window, close the door, those kinds of things. And she was lovely. When I went back to Ireland as a young, I probably was 15 or 16 years old. one of the first places I went to was to see Miss Annie. And believe it or not, for a while she was my password on my computer. But the disappointing thing was that so she kind of laid the groundwork, but the teachers following her did not teach us any Irish. And for a while I was pretty angry with them, but then just in kindness, I thought they probably just didn't have the capacity to do it. They passed the test, but they weren't native speakers. So all of my Irish I got in kindergarten and first class. And then for years and years, I mean, I mentioned, going home to Kerry, and my grandparents lived in Dublin. So I took the train from Dublin to Killarney, and I was sitting on a train, and there were two young girls about my age speaking As Gaeilge the entire trip. I was so jealous and very impressed. And so I guess the seed was sown by Miss Annie a long time ago, and I never really had the opportunity to dive into the language, just work and kids and life. And then the pandemic hit, and I seized the opportunity, and I used a little bit of Buntus and other recordings just to kind of get myself started. And then I discovered that Cumann na Gaeilge in Boston does an Irish class. So that's basically my little story about Irish. And I think another impetus was we went to Dingle about 4 years ago, and stayed on the peninsula for a couple of weeks. And one afternoon we were at the museum there, and a crowd of, it must have been, it was all boys. So they made a lot of noise, and they must have been about fourth class, and they were all, speaking, rapidly in Irish. And their teacher came in and read them the Riot Act also in Irish. And, they were as good as gold after that. And I said to my wife, that could have been me. If I had stayed, I would have been speaking. But anyway, there you have it.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed that story. I think it resonates with me a little bit because, I went to I had the privilege to be put to an Irish-speaking primary school, and that seed was sown as well very young, although I don't think I understood that it was sown at all. And I definitely went through phases. It's amazing that you can still, look back at that time. And I know that it's a shame that the teachers after, Miss Annie didn't do, what they should have done or what you would have hoped they've done. But maybe that happened for a reason. Maybe you would have got on and you might have resented it, or you mightn't have got on well. Maybe it worked out perfectly for you. I think everything happens for a reason, Tim. But
well, knowing their personalities, they might have sowed a hatred for it in me.
Maybe, who knows? Let's look at it that way. That it worked out well.
Yeah, the rod was still in use at that time, so
it gets more serious the older you get and the more things you have to learn. So maybe that's why. But no, lovely story, really, really, really nice. And I suppose, life gets in the way in coming back. And of course, the pandemic forced all of us online, and to kind of reevaluate what we like ourselves as well as people, other than just a job, or what you should be doing, what you shouldn't be doing. I think Yeah, people found out a lot about themselves during the pandemic, and I've seen a lot of people turn to bite size and just online platforms because it can be difficult to connect with the language, especially when you're abroad. You're in the States, I'm in Germany. Yes, I have Conor na Gaeilge in Berlin if I wanted it, and you have the various organizations in America, but also, you know, online does work for a lot of people. So maybe my next question is, how have you been finding it since you started, Tim? Like, I've seen you on Pubble, and I see you're always active and you make lots of progress, and you're very willing to, you know, get stuck into my daily challenges. And we were just talking before I hit record that you do your little bit of translation as well. So how have you been finding it over the last couple of years?
So I think you know, initially it was it was frustrating. You know, just like I remember, you know, like I first discovered irregular verbs, and I said, "Oh my God, I'm never going to. This is how did this get from there to here?" And then you know, and I persisted, and what I'm finding is I love it, and I have time to do it, which is a real blessing. Um, and you know, I take opportunities, you know, like any language acquisition, you know, speaking comes after everything else. So I find it, you know, easier to read and write rather than to speak. And in speaking, I have to really think really fast, and I can't do that at Osceola yet. But that's my goal. And I, you know, I eventually, you know, there's a teacher with Cumann na Gaeilge. Her name is Mary, and she is American born, but her parents were born in Ireland, and her father had some Irish. Her mother, you know, just kind of left Irish behind her. And she just happened to take a class after university, just for the fun of it, and she got totally stuck into to Irish. Um, and you know, she, I think one of the things I like about it, about her approach, is that she really focuses on the grammar. Um, and you know, that may sound boring, but for me, you know, when I started, I had no idea why this is this way, and this, and as a learner, I kind of need to know the whys, you know, because if you know, just you know, I mean, speaking in English is just, it's just kind of a natural thing. But there's a lot of grammar that I know, that I kind of learned over the years. And so things, you know, are, you know, I understand why things the way they are. And that's what I really wanted in Irish, is you know, kind of something to kind of ground me, and then I can kind of venture out more. You know, so I do some grammar studying on my own. I've used a book by somebody by the name of Stenson, and actually she's from Minnesota, I understand. But you know, so I take opportunities to, and I think one of the things that I like about Bite Size is that, you know, you can do it every day. I appreciate the things that you put forward. And it really is bite size. You know, sometimes they go a little bit overboard and do more than is expected, but that's who I am. But you know, it can be, you can respond in, you know, 2 or 3 sentences, and you know, and that's enough. So I find, you know, and doing it every day is really helpful also. And now I have the time to do it. So.
Well, I like your approach, Tim, because a lot of people would avoid grammar. I have to say, you know, as I said, I was schooled in Irish in primary school, and when I went to secondary school, I kind of, because it was an English speaking secondary school, I didn't have to learn any Irish because I had my basics, and everyone was at such a different level, and most were coming from English speaking primary schools. It was like going back in time for me. I was back in first class, although I was in first year. So I really just didn't think about it and just did well all the time because it wasn't that difficult. But then when I got to college or university, I did my course, and of course I should have learned my grammar, but I ignored it. I thought, I did it in primary school. None of these people did it in primary school, you know, and I thought I'm fine. I wasn't fine. My grammar was shocking, and only when I moved to Germany and I started teaching it that I had to really I got the questions like you want to know, Tim, why. I got the why questions, and I was the one not looking for the answer. I was the one that was supposed to have the answer. So I was then forced to go back and find the answer. And I did have to brush up on my grammar, and I have to say that it has helped, but only in the last 5 years have I really started to think more about grammar. But I found that I enjoyed it. I think I just didn't want to do it because I thought I didn't have to do it. I wasn't hating it or anything, but it can be difficult. But you can be maybe lucky that there are only 11 irregular verbs in Irish, because of course, you know, I did German and every second word is irregular. In Deutsch. So yeah, another point then, well, Nancy Stenson's book is quite good. Nancy Stenson's Basic Irish, I think there's a couple of them that she has. I like her stuff. I use it myself as well. And what else were you saying? Oh yeah, come and Gaeilge as well, and your teacher. It's interesting, there's a couple of people here as well in Germany that have just started Irish for the fun of it in college. I get a lot of students coming in the first semester, first year. They think, I'll take something new, even though they're doing something totally different as their main studies. They'll take Irish and they say, yeah, I just want to do it for this semester. And more often than not, the people who say at the first semester, oh, I'll just do this semester, they're the ones that are with me still into their fifth and their sixth semester, and the ones that I thought would stay didn't stay. So it's interesting who picks it up and who doesn't, and for what reasons, and that you never know where it'll take you.
Yeah, and I think there's, for me also, the Irish language was suppressed. And taken away from people, because we should have been speaking Irish, from the day I was born. My parents didn't, my mother had some Irish, my father had some Irish, but they were essentially English speaking people. To me, the cultural aspect of it is really important. That this is our language, and if I identify myself as an Irish person, then I should know something about my language. And somebody might say to me, like at the party the other day, oh, so you speak Gaelic? And I said, no, I speak Irish. I want to make sure that Scots people might speak Gaelic, but we speak Irish. Anyway, but I think it's I grew up there, and some of my roots are still there. I still love the fact that I'm an Irish born person.
And it's very important, and I feel that as well, that I am abroad. I know I'm only abroad 4 years, but I think, I don't know, a lot of Irish people will resonate with the fact that when you do go abroad, you do want to find or know that your roots are still somewhere in Ireland. And I find that a lot of people, when they go, move abroad, even within the first year. I see them online on social media putting up extra things in Irish and using their Irish words that they might have from school. I think it does something to the soul when you do go abroad and you look back at Ireland, and I think the language is the most tangible thing that you can have. You can't be there, but you can still speak the language and understand the language that from the country where you're from.
Yeah. So, a good friend of mine, he came to America when he was 24, and he had gone to Irish-speaking primary and secondary school. And he was telling me he had a conversation with Seamus Heaney, Oscalia, he lives in Charlotte, North Carolina now. But somebody asked him, if you had to describe Ireland in one word, what would you say? And he said community. That we have connection to each other, and the language connects us, and we're kind of a social people as well, and we want to be connected.
Yeah, definitely, and I agree. And even when I logged on to this call with you, I just feel an immediate I don't know, you're immediately relaxed when you're talking to another Irish person. Not that I'm on edge talking to anyone who's not Irish. Don't take it that way. But I don't know, you feel this intrinsic relaxation that you're meeting an old friend, even though we don't talk often, Tim, like in person or even online through video call. Usually it's typing. But I agree with you. And even if I do meet an Irish person abroad here in Berlin, last week I was there, and here in Leipzig, I just chat to them like I knew them always, and I'm sure you've come across that in your life as well.
Absolutely. We have a good friend. He was a priest for a while, when I first met him, I found out he was from Roscommon, and we became fast friends in about 5 minutes. And he's a fellow who he's a psychologist. He teaches at the university level in Massachusetts, and a very canny man, because he has a longitudinal study going on. He's studying families, and the children, and then the children grow up, and then the children have children. So it's his excuse to go back to Ireland every year because he has to check on his study.
There you go. I'm looking for the same excuse myself to do some field work back at home that I can. Well, I could head home more often, but I'd love an excuse to do it as well during work times. Yeah, so all that talk now about, go back to grammar, and I know you said your goal was, to master grammar and master everything, but what's your maybe more, short-term and long-term goal with Irish? Where are you now, and where do you want to be? Is there anything that you're aiming for? Finishing a book? Give me something, or do you have any? Maybe you don't.
So I long term, I actually just want to be comfortable in having a conversation in Irish. Nothing like profound or anything, but just to be able to do that. And the other part of me is I want to kind of pass this on to the rest of my family, because they're all English speakers. My wife's surname is O'Shea, which is a very Kerry name. My father used to say, if you threw a stone up in the air, it would probably fall on an O'Shea, as there's so many of them. So and not that I want, my family to speak Irish, but just to kind of have an appreciation for it. So one of the things I taught my grandson was the Mahu, so so now when he sees me doing something, he'll say Mahu, and he calls me Mackie. So so I think I'd like to pass that on to him as well. Just the love of the country, actually, and the language is such a huge part of it. And of course, I would love to. The Boston College has an Irish Studies program that a friend of mine actually tried to get a doctorate in, but he couldn't master the Irish language. And, he got to a certain point and for whatever reason, it just stopped for him. Being able to participate in things like that the university has. They have a Law Gaelga on April 1st, which is, they gather, people who are fluent in the language and people who are not so fluent in the language like myself, and people who are just interested, and it's, a day on campus doing things that Irish people do, talking.
Sounds like a great day and a very straightforward idea that everyone should show up for. Yeah, Tim, those goals, I was expecting those goals because, you said you'd one grandson, and I think it would be important, even, you're not expecting the child to be fluent in Irish with you. Great if he could be, if you could teach him, but yeah, to pass it down. And also just, you have a realistic goal. I don't think anyone's goals need to be that they must read 5 novels within a year. That's a goal in any language, even in English, for me anyway. I'm not a reader, as I said, but they're very achievable goals, I think, as well, Tim. And I've seen you come on leaps and bounds with your grammar and with your vocabulary and your what I see on Pubble and your sentences and your paragraphs that you write. So well done to you overall, and I've already congratulated you off record for your translation skills as well. So I think keep that up, and you seem to be enjoying it. And what I see then is, the fact that you are translating a poem or a piece, that you're bringing it outside of the book or the grammar book or whatever book that you're reading from, or a course with us on Bite Size, and you're incorporating it into your life. And you were able to then give the gift of a translated poem to a friend. And I think that's such an achievement in itself. So Mahu, well done. On that note, I think I will say Gurb Míle Maith and Slán go Fóill. I really enjoyed that talk, Tim, and thank you so much for being with me.
Thank you, Falter. I loved it. Thank you.
I'll talk to you soon. Slán.
Slán.